Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Ripple Revolution. Thank you for joining us today. There has never been a better time to live your soul's purpose and initiate change than now. Do you feel disconnected from yourself, your family, your significant other, like you've drifted off course, lost connection to your inner compass? Have you given up on your dreams, periodically wondering if there is more to life than what you are currently experiencing, consumed by other people's agendas? Do you feel like you are solely, or more precisely, soullessly existing? Please don't worry, you're in the right place. This interview is part of a global event featuring a diverse collaboration of speakers, including social impact entrepreneurs, spiritual leaders, elders, shamans, visionaries, thought leaders, and educators, who are all boldly creating their intentional lives, acting as beacons to guide and inspire others to live audaciously and fearlessly. They are generously sharing their wisdom and personal experiences, offering inspiration, encouragement, and providing the practical tools required for you to create the remainder of your life intentionally, authentically, and unapologetically. We invite you to reconnect to yourself, that young child inside you who used to dream big dreams and has overcome every obstacle in its way. Also, connect with your future self who feels for what you are going through right now and knows that incredible things await if you choose to take action on something that fuels that light inside you. This choice will not only profoundly change the trajectory of your life, but will initiate a ripple of impact which will positively influence future generations. These interviews have been curated to empower you to reconnect to yourself and reignite your inner flame so that you have the courage, support, and tools to take action to reconnect to your soul's purpose through imperfect actions now. I am your host, Pete Stedman, and today it gives me great pleasure to interview the hugely inspiring Getrude Matshe. Welcome, Getrude.
Thank you, Pete. It's wonderful to be with you today.
For those of you who haven't met Getrude yet, I do encourage you to check out her TEDx talks on YouTube, but I'm going to give introduce her bio here. Getrude is an inspirational speaker who has been described as a vibrant bundle of African energy, whose zest and passion for life inspires everyone she meets. She is passionate about helping people achieve their full potential and find their individual life purpose. She is passionate about individual success. This makes her an energetic, inspirational, and enlightening speaker. Getrude has written several books and is now a book writing coach. Getrude is the founder and global curator of Her Story Circle and the tech startup Diversity Connector. Welcome.
Absolutely wonderful to be with you, Pete. Thank you so much for this opportunity to share my story with your community.
Thank you for your patience. Gertrude and I have had a couple of challenges getting this far. We started an interview and it got interrupted. So Gertrude has very generously committed the time to re-record so that we can make sure that we're getting this message to you. And so the topic today is finding your purpose and becoming a living legacy. I'd like to start with, how did you find your purpose?
Oh gosh, I think my purpose found me, Pete. My purpose found me. I remember I was 17 years old. World Health had come to our village. I was born in Zimbabwe, and they were dropping flyers out of a helicopter and free condoms to a population of people who could not read. I was sitting on my grandmother's veranda, watching the parents grabbing these pieces of paper flying out of the sky, looking at the cartoon characters scrunching up the paper and using it to light their fires. I saw the kids blowing up the condoms and running around the village with balloons. And then they would run these workshops in English on how to use a condom. And they would take a broomstick to demonstrate. When they left, every single hut had a broomstick on a condom behind the door, a condom on a broomstick behind the door, because they took it so literally that that was the way they could prevent the spread of AIDS. So I plucked up the courage. I was 17 years old, and I wrote to World Health and told them how ridiculous their campaign had been and how it had failed. And I offered to write a play that had a theme around HIV and AIDS and how the virus was spreading. Because we passed down knowledge through storytelling, I thought that was the most effective way to communicate this message to my community. So I created an all-women's theater group, and we would perform this play during the weekends and run the workshops in the vernacular languages so people could understand. And it was at that point, Pete, where I realized that education is a basic human right. You know, most of these people were my relatives, my aunts, my uncles who had never gone to school. And they would ask questions like, you know, what is a virus? How is it spreading? It was an invisible war we were up against. You couldn't see it, you couldn't touch it, you couldn't smell it. Yet so many people were dying from this virus. So I found ways to explain what a virus was by buying apples at the beginning of the week and letting them decompose. Then at the weekend, when I ran my workshops, I would pull out a box of rotten apples and a box of healthy apples and illustrate that this is what happens to the human body. Something had gone inside the apple, it was eating it from the inside, it would decompose and die. So it became a passion, Pete. All my work has been focused around educating children in Africa because of the AIDS pandemic, mostly because we had 49 orphaned children on my side of the family alone. So just to put things in perspective, this is my second pandemic. My grandmother had 11 children. She had 34 grandchildren. 19 of my first cousins died of AIDS, including my youngest brother. And that became the work, that became my purpose. My reason for being is to educate as many children as possible before I check out of this life.
That's such a remarkable story. It's you've like overcome so much. You've seen so much, and just at such an early age, you were called to step into your purpose. How can other people uncover their purpose?
Pete, I think your purpose lies in your passion. Your purpose lies in the things that you do intuitively without being told how to do it. You know, when people would watch me acting in my plays, they asked me where I studied to act, and I never went to schools. It's not something I was taught. It's just something I do very intuitively. And it effectively turned into a career. I have been an inspirational speaker for the last 31 years. I've traveled to 56 countries, speaking in conferences and events, and that's how I make my living. So I do believe that your life purpose lies in the things that you do intuitively. That's why someone like Bill Gates is Bill Gates. He loves what he does. It's not work for him, it's play. If you watch world-class soccer players on a soccer pitch, they kick that ball in such a unique way. You can't be taught certain things. So that is where your passion lies. And if you can't find it, talk to your mother, talk to your father, talk to family members who know you really well, and try and uncover the things you did as a child without being taught. So I was that little girl at the back of the class, talking all the time, cracking jokes, making people laugh. And I was punished for it as a child, and now I get paid to do it.
I think that's so cool. I think it's just we're in this system, and we're taught that there's certain things we have to do to be successful, but success doesn't lie in the way the system measures it. And so I'd love it if you would share a couple more of the projects that you're involved in or work with, such as the library and things like this, the way you're using your voice to have an impact.
Wow. So I've had a number of projects over the years. Some are still ongoing. I took over the small primary school in our village, mostly because the 49 orphan kids were in that school. And it got to a point where I couldn't choose my family members against the other 300 children in the school. So there's 350 kids in this school. So I started raising money to pay for school fees, to buy stationery, books, pencils, and it grew in a very organic and unusual way. You know, we have a feeding program that I started in 2007. We had had a drought that year. Then we had torrential rains. The whole of Southern Africa was flooded. And I had gone to Zimbabwe to visit the school. And I observed when the kids got to school, within 5-10 minutes, they would all fall asleep. There was no energy. When I asked the principal, he explained that most of the kids were eating 2 or 3 times a week if they were lucky. There just was no food. So we started giving the children a bowl of porridge every morning. And then the community heard that there was food at the school, and they started sending all the under 5-year-old children to the school for food. How do you turn away an under 5-year-old child, Pete? So I was forced to start a preschool. So I'm saying everything has happened very organically. But the beautiful thing is the children in my community are now getting an education at a very early age. Those poor mothers who had to go into the fields with babies on their backs, toiling in the heat, can now leave the children at the school for childcare. And the preschool has grown. It's getting a lot of support from my friends in New Zealand and Australia. So that's just one little example of the work I've done. For literacy, I found that there was a huge need for books. You know, we are in a community that has no electricity, no running water. So I've managed to install electricity. I've managed to sink a borehole. So we had a water project as well. And this year we are trying to start a market gardening project around the water so the community can grow vegetables that can be consumed by the children in the school. So we start a lunch project as well. So at the moment, they're only getting a bowl of porridge in the morning, but we want to introduce lunch. The other thing about the water is when I went to Zimbabwe, I noticed that we have mangoes. Mangoes grow like wildflowers in our region. Mangoes are rotting everywhere. I was speaking in the United Nations a couple of years ago with an idea to start a mango plantation. And my dream was to gift a mango sapling to every child when they start school and tie it into the agricultural program for the school. The child has to water that tree every morning, nurture it, look after it, make it grow, and learn that by growing trees, we're putting oxygen into the atmosphere. And I met an environmentalist in the UN who encouraged me to do this because my community can end up earning carbon credits by planting trees and offsetting the carbon emission for developing countries. So that's another project that we've started. If anybody wants to contribute, it's just $5 for a mango sapling. And if you make it $10, it means that that child gets their education paid for a month. It costs $10 for 1 month of education in Zimbabwe. Collecting books. I decided to give speeches in primary schools all over Wellington in New Zealand, where I lived, and encouraging children to bring any books they don't want so I could build a library. Pete, in 90 days, I collected 65,000 books. They are sitting in a 40-foot container in the harbor in Wellington, ready to be shipped to Zimbabwe. When the container gets to the village, we will empty out the container and refurbish it into the first health clinic in this community as well. So I actually bought the container for $5,000, and it will be used to be turned into a clinic. And we will build a library that is going to service a much greater community than just the 300 children that I am serving now. The vision is to buy a big truck and have a mobile library that can go to all the other villages in our area and give children access to reading material. So we're really still relying on physical books in Zimbabwe because of the lack of electricity.
I'm getting goosebumps just hearing everything that you're doing, how you're where do I start? It's the like how everything unfolds, and the willingness and the desire to say yes, and how when you say yes, the pieces come together to create this beautiful tapestry of life and it's like changing the opportunities for so many people. I think it's hugely inspiring. I think
Yeah, it's interesting that by saying yes, Pete, you don't have to figure out how you're going to do it. This is one of the things I've learned in my life. When I say yes to a problem that is in front of me, the how shows up. You know, I was giving a speech a couple of years ago, just before COVID in Las Vegas. And I shared that I wanted to start a cooperative for the mothers in my community in Zimbabwe to start making reusable sanitary pads for the girls. So when these girls start having a menstrual cycle, they don't go to school when they have a period because our government is not importing menstrual product that the poor can afford. It's very expensive. So little girls are missing out on school. I also shared that most of the children in our community get raped because they don't have underwear. A woman in the audience came up to me. Her name is Jerry O'Lion. And she told me that she was working with a school in Guatemala and they were making reusable sanitary pads for girls in Guatemala. This woman converted her garage, Pete, into a factory. She invited people from her church to come and sew. They made 1,000 kits for the children in my community. And each of the kits comes with 7 pads for every day of the week. They come with 3 pairs of panties. They come with a bar of soap and a small chart so the girls can track their cycle and predict when their period is actually coming. Then COVID happened and we got stuck in shipping. The shipping tariffs were so high, we couldn't move this product. Then I said to Jerry, to make this sustainable, while we're waiting for things to unravel and for the world to reopen, let's collect sewing machines and overlockers instead and start a cooperative and train the mothers in this community to make the pads. So that's something else that we're fundraising, Pete. We're now fundraising to ship the 1,000 kits to Zimbabwe. This amazing woman has turned this into her passion. And she has collected sewing machines and overlockers. So we're trying to raise $50,000 for that project to get this product shipped and start the first cooperative in our community, empowering the mothers with employment in the making of this product and keeping our little girls in school as well.
It's so inspiring, the work that you're doing. It's when my wife and I sort of first learned about the work that you're doing, we were so called for you to be a speaker on this summit, and we're so excited that we are going to be sharing a percentage of the sales from the lifetime access to your social impact businesses to help to raise funds for these projects to come to life, or just not come to life, to grow and have more impact. And so it's just such a pleasure, and it's so inspiring to hear you share these things. And I'm just calling to the people who are watching and listening to this, that if you're called to contribute more, there are links on the website where you can go, so you can just help Getrude, help do the work that she is doing, because it's so needed in the world.
Thank you, Pete. And you know, just by doing what you're doing, your passion is to uplift those who are on the ground doing work wherever they are in the world. That's another way of finding your purpose. You don't have to physically go into these communities and do the work. You might just find someone like me or in a different country who's helping, who's doing something that makes a difference. And by you supporting me, you're tapping into your passion as well, which is to uplift and empower those people who are making a difference in the world.
Thank you. Something which I want to share with people here is the fact that we're on this summit, we're talking about finding your purpose. And I just I would like to sort of take this moment to say, it's like, for some people, finding your purpose is not being the next Mother Teresa, not being the next sort of leader in that space. You're being of service to somebody, like Gertrude's mentioned, talking about here. It's like, how do we come together to collaborate and co-create for the betterment of humanity, for those who generally don't have choices? So at this point, I just want to sort of see, like, where would you suggest that somebody starts, so that you're doing this incredible work? And so if somebody is called, it's like, where do they begin?
Let me share the philosophy by which I live. It's called Ubuntu. Literally translated, Ubuntu ngamuntu ngabantu says, I am because you are. It's our way of expressing the condition of being human. To be a human being, you have to be in observation of others. In Southern Africa, when we greet, we say sabona, which means I see you. And it's not the seeing of sight, it's an acknowledging of my humanity and yours. Now, when you see things in your community, in your society that bother you, and you step up and try and make a difference in small ways, that is Ubuntu. It's a way of living, it's a way of being. And it starts at home, Pete. It starts at home with your family. Paying attention to your husband, to your wife, to your children, your parents. Are you really tuning into their needs? Are you really aware of what's happening in their world? It starts at home. Then it extends to your community, your neighborhood. You know, right now with COVID, there's a lot of lonely people who are in isolation, who haven't had contact with family for a very long time. Do you know if the neighbor to the right of your house or the left of your house is okay? When was the last time you authentically had a conversation with them? Have you ever offered to go and buy their groceries or pick up their medical script? During the pandemic, Pete, I got to know my neighbors for the first time in 21 years. There was a man who lives a few houses away from me who came and dropped a flyer in every single household in our street. This flyer said, "Hi, my name is John. My wife's name is Mary. We just wanted to check in on you and find out if you're okay. If you need help in any way, this is our phone numbers." He then went on and created a Facebook group for the street as well. And this couple literally connected an entire street like I had never seen before out of Africa. So I grew up in a society where I knew every single person in the 50 households in my street. We knew the grandparents, the grandchildren, because we played with them, and we knew everybody by name. But living in New Zealand, living in Australia, people live very differently in the Western world. You don't get to know who your neighbors are. So have you paid attention to the people who live in your street? I got to find out that there was a woman who lived about 3 houses away from me, who was in a wheelchair and disabled. She had 2 little children, and she had a baby who was 9 months old. So I ended up offering to take care of her little 5-year-old son every afternoon. She would put him on Zoom, and all I did was read him African stories and tell him all kinds of stories. And for an hour, hour and a half, I could keep this little 5-year-old entertained while his mother could just sit back with the baby and have a cup of tea. So it's those little things, Pete, that make a difference in the world. And then if you have the bandwidth, if you have the means, do something somewhere else in the world. So it's a simple 3-step process. You put your family first, your community next. Then if you have the reserves, do something somewhere else in the world if you can.
That's a beautiful impact that you're creating there. And I love the way the connection piece, because I personally, I feel there's a lot of disconnection in the world. And I think it's important for us to to look out for each other and help each other and reach out and find ways where we can be reconnecting. And so, like, could you share with us why you created the social impact movement?
Oh, her story was birthed, Pete, out of necessity and need. I had gone through a very traumatic separation in 2014 that led to a divorce in 2015. I was married for 27 years to a man I thought I would die with. He was my soulmate, and our relationship collapsed. I ended up leaving New Zealand, traveling for almost 2 years, literally living out of my suitcase. I went to 14 countries in those 2 years and ended up living and working in New Mexico in the US, lecturing at the University of New Mexico in film. And my illness came out of hypertension, depression, and stress. During this time, I developed a dry cough and a headache that only came at night. And for 6 months, I could not sleep lying flat. I would start coughing. My body would wake me up. I would go to this emergency center. They would give me cough mixture, headache medication, and send me home. Fortunately, my children realized that I was getting worse. And they said, Mom, you need to come back to New Zealand, come and get proper health care. So I came back, saw my doctor, who was shocked that I had survived the flight because my blood pressure was in the 200s. And the whole time I was in the US, nobody ever checked my blood pressure. I didn't even think it was worth checking because I always had abnormally low blood pressure my whole life, even when I was pregnant with my kids. So I went on to blood pressure medication, and I was going back to the US, came through Australia to visit my daughter. And she said to me, Mom, you have not slowed down since the divorce. Please don't go back right now. You don't look well. And she bought me a 10-day vacation in Bali. She paid for me to be in a spa for 10 days, getting a massage every day. And I collapsed on the 9th day of this trip in a rice field in Indonesia and almost died on the 27th of June, 2017. Pete, as I was lying in that rice field, I realized that all of my philanthropic work would have died with me. For almost 6 months, I couldn't walk. I couldn't do anything. And I had so many women and children relying on me for donations, for fundraising. And I decided to create a movement called Her Story. I first of all wanted to share my personal story in how I had failed to look after myself, how I realized that your health is your wealth. If you're not healthy, you can't create wealth and abundance. It was a conference with 100 women launched in Las Vegas. And my vision was to shine a light on all of my philanthropic work by curating conferences throughout the world and enrolling other women to come on board and support some of my philanthropic work. Pete, this movement has grown in the last 3 years. We are now almost 50,000 strong, women from over 25 countries who have stepped forward to share their own stories. And every woman will bring a social impact project that she already supports if she has one, or she can plug into the now 200 projects that we have curated. We raise money by turning these stories into books. So we publish every woman in a volume with 10 other women. We've got the Her Story magazine where we can promote their businesses, their work. We have a podcast where we share these stories as well. So this has been one of the best projects I have ever engaged in because I've managed to transfer my way of being, my way of doing, and inspiring other women to make a difference in their own communities or somewhere else in the world. And that's how the Her Story movement was formed. That's what it stands for. We share our stories to uplift, inspire, energize, motivate another woman who might be going through a similar challenge to yours. So I know a lot of women over 50 who go through very traumatic divorces, end up with cancer, with heart failure, different types of illnesses. And by my getting back on my feet, I'm helping another woman get back on her feet. And my story becomes the light at the end of the tunnel for her. So she can get up and make a difference in her own life as well. So that's what my movement is about.
That's a truly, truly beautiful movement. I admire your strength and your resolve to face that turning point or face those challenges in life and find the gift in that experience, and just sort of see the purpose and the need to continue, because you don't want to let that sort of expire with you.
Yeah, the amazing thing, Pete, is the healing that has come out of the sharing of these stories is what really blows me away. You know, I now work and I coach and mentor women who were raped as children, domestic violence survivors, human trafficking, and the healing that comes in just being in a safe environment where your story can be heard is what really this is all about. In Africa, we believe that a problem shared is a problem halved. That the minute you share your story with someone else, it's not yours to carry alone. The listener is now part of your story, is now part of your journey. And I've had women who've never had the courage to talk about these issues. Women in Western countries, you know, in Zimbabwe, in Africa, we don't have counselors. We don't have the facilities, psychiatrists to help you if you're going through anything emotional. You cope by sharing your story with the women in your community. So now we're able to do this online. Some of our conferences have had to be online because of COVID. We're now planning our first in-person conference in December. And it's in the sharing of the stories. That was something that completely amazed me. The healing that is coming out of the sharing of these stories is phenomenal.
I love this. It's, for me, it's about how the pieces come together again. It's this the sort of the linking arms and the connected and the oneness of how we're like one story can sort of impact many, and the ripples which can come out from the sharing of the stories. How do people get involved with your work, or how do they, like, where's the best place, or what are you looking for in the way of contribution or participation?
Oh, we're looking for contribution in multiple ways, Pete. We're looking for collaborators like you know, people who can help me share my story. If you have a podcast, if you have a platform, if you have events, if you are looking for speakers, please get in touch with me. Because this is how we manage to amplify the voices of all of the women who are stepping up. We are looking for your stories. You know, I believe that the richest places in the world are graveyards, because they're full of people who had amazing life stories, life experiences, and they never really got to share them with the world. So don't go to your grave with your story. Your story can be the light at the end of the tunnel for someone else. So you can participate as being a sponsor for these events. But the main thing is your contribution. You're sharing your story and helping us curate these books, these videos, these magazines that have a ripple effect that impacts on women's lives worldwide.
I encourage everybody here who's listening and here with us right now and listening to this, who's called to either contribute or participate, or, like, please share this. Let people know that this is going on, because there's disconnection and there's disease and there's problems around the world. But there's also projects like this which are hugely uplifting and can have such a profound impact for so many people, that we're doing a disservice to not support this. So please don't keep this a secret. And I hope you're enjoying what Gertrude is sharing and finding it inspiring. And if you are, please go to the comments and just let Gertrude and us know that it's like how this is feeling for you. What's coming up? How do you feel called to contribute in the world? And so I just want to continue here. So you're now guiding people in a writing process. Would you like to share a little more of that?
Yes, the reason why people don't write books, Pete, or don't share their stories in the written form is because they start self-editing. They go into their heads. They think, oh, my English is not so good. The grammar is horrible. Who will want to read my story? So I developed a process called How to Write a Book in 40 Hours. And it's a process where you just tell the story, you just speak. And we transcribe the audio and we ghostwrite it for you. So writing a book doesn't have to be difficult. It doesn't have to be hard. You start off with one chapter. If you speak for 10, 15 minutes a day, you can generate 5 to 10 pages of text. So I inspire you to give it a try. And if you need the help, the support, the mentoring to get it done, that's what the Her Story movement is all about. It's in hand holding you to articulate your story, put it down on paper, and inspire somebody who needs to hear that story from you today.
Where do the stories go to once they're created? Are they shared through the Her Story website?
Yes. So on our website, we now have a bookstore of hundreds of stories that we've put out. We have the books on Amazon and on Kindle. So you can find the Her Story series of books all over the internet. But the main shop is on our website, theherstorycircle.com.
And then one of the other questions is what advice would you give to your younger self?
Oh, I love playing with this, Pete. I always like playing with time. The time is an illusion, and that I could go back to the younger me and give her some nuggets of wisdom. And I could go into the future and talk to the future me and ask her, what am I supposed to do next? So if I was to go back and give advice to my younger self, I would tell her to keep believing in herself and to just know that everything that has come into her head is real. I've had big dreams in my life, Pete. I've had dreams of changing the world in some way before I die. And a lot of times I have doubted myself. I've held back. I've thought, who do I think that I can do this? But when I have gone against those feelings and I've just stepped into my own, like I said, the how shows up. I didn't have to figure out how. So if you have inspired ideas, know that you have them for a reason, and you were born with everything you need to bring them into reality, to bring them into fruition. Just believe in yourself.
What would be the next step you would share with somebody past the believing in themselves, as far as like bringing something into reality? Because there's so many people out there who they know that they don't belong where they are, but they're getting stuck and getting sort of just not having the impact that they would like.
Write it down. Put it on a piece of paper. They say that our words have a vibration to them. For an architect to build a house, somebody will describe what the house will look like, how many bedrooms, how many bathrooms, what the porch will look like. And he'll take a pen and paper and sketch the drawing of this house. That's then given to a builder to build the house. So get those ideas out of your head by just writing them down on a piece of paper. It could be a list of goals. It could be the vision of what it will look like when it's done. And then start talking about it. Because it's when you start giving energy to the story that you bring it to life. You just don't know who you're going to share that story with, who is the link in the chain that helps you bring it into reality. So I've lived a charmed life, Pete. People say to me, Gertrude, your life is so weird. It's so unusual. How do you meet these people? It's because I'm constantly sharing my ideas. I talk about the things that I'm doing. And then one person will say, you know what? I know this person who's doing something similar, and they become the conduit, the connector to get me to the right person who's going to help me with the how. So don't be afraid to share your ideas and to share your visions and dreams as well. Write it down and then just start talking about it. The magic happens from there.
That's beautiful. I love the connectedness. I love the conversations. And there's going to be people who don't want you to succeed. And then so it's a case of just not allowing that and just continue on to find the people who really connect with what your mission and your purpose, and help you to clarify the vision.
And unfortunately, Pete, the people closest to you are the ones who'll try and hold you back. And it's not that they want to hold you back and stop you. It's because they love you. They want to protect you. They want to prevent you from getting hurt. And we are actually our worst enemies. The words we say to ourselves hold us back more than anything external. So be aware of that little voice in your head that says, who do you think you are? This is going to fail. This will never work. It's your ego. And again, your ego is designed to protect you from preventing you from getting hurt. And what I do now when I hear the little voice is I thank it for being there. I thank it for wanting to protect me. But this is something I need to do. This is something I need to try. And I think because I've always not wanted to regret not having tried, for me, failure is not having tried. I would rather try and fail than not try at all. Failure to me is not having tried and living with regret. So share your stories, share your ideas with people who can inspire you, who can uplift you, who can help you along the journey. If it means avoiding your family and friends, that's what I've had to do. Do that.
Yeah, I love the piece about like the piece about regret, and the not having tried something, because I've gone through changes myself, and usually the family members will come around in time, but also not everybody in our lives is set to be with us for the duration of our life. They're here for a chapter or two, maybe several, but maybe it's just a page.
Yeah. And just being aware of that not everybody's going to be on your journey from the beginning to the end. Some people will come in for a season and leave, and some people are there for the long haul.
So just thinking about that, I'd like to, we talked about you sort of giving advice to your younger self. 20 years from now, when you've accomplished everything that you're currently working towards, what would that older version say to you now?
Oh, if I could sit with my older self, based on how I'm living my life right now, Pete, I would say, thank you. Thank you for trusting me. Thank you for trusting me to guide you to this point. Thank you for believing in yourself and knowing you could do it. So my way of life, my way of living is in the belief that I am guided through this work by my older self. She's already there in the future, 20 years from now, waiting for me to catch up with her. And if I could sit on a porch with her and have a conversation, I know she would thank me because she has guided me that far. And that's why I was saying we are born hardwired with all of the skills and all the knowledge that we need to achieve our goals and to bring our visions and dreams into reality. You would not have that thought, you would not have that dream unless you had the how to do it hardwired in your DNA.
I just love the information that you're sharing with us, and I really, really appreciate you taking the time to empower people. And like you've accomplished so much in your life. What else is it in the future for you?
Whew, the future for me now, Pete, is legacy. You know, I just became a grandmother last year. My little grandson is exactly a year old. And when I look at this little boy, I want to make sure that I leave this planet a better place than how I found it. There's so many imbalances in the world right now, Pete. We've got climate change, we have poverty, we have just so many challenges that the next generation are going to have to face. So what could I do now that can impact my grandchildren in the future? Global warming, planting of these trees. I know I'm making a difference with every tree that I am a part of planting. There's little things that we can do to help the next generation have a better life, have a better world. So for me, it's all about legacy and leaving this planet better than it was before I came.
I'm I get goosebumps thinking about that, because it's something which I often think about, and it's something I'm working on here, is reforestation for future generations. And I love that the impact is a simple, actionable step which anybody could do. We're not trying to tackle all of these issues in one go, because it would be so overwhelming and so suppressive. But if everybody here is taking some form of an imperfect or an imperfect action, but giving thought to future generations, is how is that action going to impact future generations?
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be difficult, Pete. It is really, really quite simple and easy. My grandmother used to say that the world's problems are very simple if we each play a part in the equation of solving them. So imagine if we heard that there's an earthquake in Haiti and we each gave $1 to that country. The 7 billion people on this planet could contribute $1. We could restore a country in a day. But humanity, human beings are living in a sense of not enoughness at the moment. We are living in a sense of you and me and not we. And part of what the Ubuntu philosophy teaches is the we philosophy, that there is no you, there is no me, there is only we. And it's when we start realizing that we can impact on each other's lives, that's where the difference really lies. Just being aware of that.
That's such a powerful message, and I get goosebumps just thinking about that we component, and how we as a human race is shifting to just be more cooperative and more collaborative, and allowing the older systems to fall away as we sort of step into a newer earth. We're stepping into a newer way of living where we're here to support each other. I'm just wondering if there's anything else you're sort of called to share with the audience right now, as far as like where we're heading or how to contribute.
Yeah, let me use another little analogy. Again, my grandmother would say that the human race is like the cells of one body. We are an organism. We are cells of the same organism. So if you cut your finger and you start to bleed, your white blood cells will rush to that point to heal it. In a week's time, you can't even see the scar where you cut yourself. And that's how we should be reacting and responding to the world's problems. Reacting in small little ways that add up to big differences in big ways. So if that could be the last thing you take away from me today, is just remembering that the differences that we perceive as human beings, the color of our skin, the texture of our hair, is only skin deep. When they finished sequencing the human genome, they found that every single human being on this planet is 99.9% the same. So we are organisms of the same, we are cells of the same organism. Just remember that. There is no difference between us. And our superpowers are empathy, collaboration, connection, compassion, and community. I call them the 4 C's and an E. If you can remember those 5 words, empathy, collaboration, connection, compassion, and community, we can solve the world's problems with those 5 superpowers.
That's such a beautiful and simple message. And I kind of, for me, I just am in immense gratitude for your generosity and your kindness, and just freely sharing the wisdom you have on this talk. I find your story so empowering and so uplifting, because it's like we can all do something. We can all contribute in some way towards the betterment of the humanity and the world at large. So just once again, I would love to say thank you very much. You're very not only are you just generously giving this information and sharing with everybody here, but there's 2 free gifts. One is a free hour consultation with Getrude. Is there anything in particular that the consultation is regarding?
It can be anything you want. You could be somebody who's just seeking direction, trying to find your life purpose. You know, sometimes in conversation with somebody else, something will show up. So I'm very, very happy to listen and to reflect back to you who you are. You could be somebody who wants to write a book. You could be somebody who wants to use your voice and share your story by becoming a public speaker. So it's really up to you to make use of that time in any way you like.
I very much encourage you to take Gertrude up on this offer. The conversations with her are so empowering and so enlightening. So please do that. And then the other is a free copy of her first book, Born on the Continent, Ubuntu. So that goes deeper into the Ubuntu principle.
Correct. I actually managed to wrap my life story around the philosophy, Pete, to illustrate what the philosophy means. And that book really reflects that I am a sum total of all of the people I've ever met in my life. People who have poured into me, people who have guided my way, who've shown me how to do things when I needed help. So that's really what this book is about.
It's what a beautiful story, because like everything we are is we're just a series of connections and conversations, and just highlights all of the oneness once again of how everything is interconnected. And so just in closing here, I believe that everybody must take imperfect actions towards something that is meaningful to them. So what action could the viewer take today, which would not only improve the quality of their life, but enrich the lives of those around them?
Go back to your family and authentically pay attention to them. When you say good morning, are you listening to hear what the response back is? How are you today? Then when you get to work, your co-workers, your boss, your subordinates, are you tuned into their needs? And like I said, it extends to your next door neighbors, the people in your community, and then pay attention to what's happening in other parts of the world. Right now, we have the war in Ukraine. There's a lot of suffering. There's a lot of need for help. Have you done something to contribute towards the fundraising that is going on in the world for Ukraine? So those are the things that I think one can go back to, that are simple, that are easy to implement this way of being.
Beautiful. Thank you. I'm in immense gratitude, and I hope that everybody here has enjoyed this interview and is empowered to do something. So once again, thank you, Gertrude.
Absolute pleasure, Pete. Thank you so much for having me. And thank you to everybody who's listening to this. Please share this video, spread the word, contribute in any way you can if you're inspired to support my work.